Hi everybody, we're here for lesson 4 of grammar and it's on subject complements. Now if you come into class on Monday and I say, that's a fabulous shirt, I'm giving you a compliment. But that's different than the compliment that we're going to talk about in this grammar lesson. This week we're talking about complements, which is C-O-M-P-L-E-M-E-N-T-S. These complements are things that complete or bring to perfection something. So for when it relates to this sentence, this is going to be kind of a big umbrella generalization. But a complement is a word or a group of words that complete the meaning of the verb. So let's look at some examples. It is a good car even though it's old. Car and old complete the meaning of the linking verb is. Who gave Mr. Garcia the present? Mr. Garcia and present are the sentence complements that complete the meaning of the action verb gave. The raccoon watched us gardening in the backyard. Us is your complement that completes the meaning of your action verb watched. Okay, now just a little foreshadowing on this lesson. The terms that we apply to the highlighted words in our first example will be different than the terms that we apply to the highlighted words in the second example. And that is because the first example has a linking verb, whereas the second and third have action verbs. But one other thing I want you to notice before we leave this slide is the types of parts of speech that make up sentence complements. Car is a noun, just a common noun. Old is an adjective. Mr. Garcia is a compound proper noun. Present is a common noun. And us is a pronoun. So there's no hard and fast rule about what your sentence complement, what the part of speech needs to be. Now, our overall term, our umbrella term, is sentence complement. Under that we have subject complement. And our subject complement is you need to remember that it's different than the regular sentence complement. It's just part of sentence complements. A subject complement is a word or a word group in the predicate that describes or identifies the subject. So now remember back to our first and second lesson this year, we divided that sentence into the subject part and the predicate part. Now our subject complements will come within the predicate part. Subject complements always relate to the linking verb, never to the action verb, always just to the linking verb. So look at some examples. The winter seemed especially mild and sunny. How kind he is. I know what a treat this is for her. Mark Twain's real name was Samuel Clemens. Okay, so we have different kinds of subject complements here. We have mild and sunny, which described our subject winter. Our second and third example are peculiar, and the reason is because our subject comes behind our complement. So that's one thing you need to note as you start into this week, that your subject can be in an unusual position, like we studied last week, and in this case, in both of these cases, our subject is behind our complement. So in our second example, kind is our complement that describes he. In our third example, treat is our complement that tells or identifies this. In our last example, Samuel Clemens is our complement that tells us about Mark Twain. So subject complements. Now look at here, we're going to just do this real quick. The different parts of speech that we find in subject complements again. We have adjectives, nouns, and proper nouns. So again, it's not limited to one type of part of speech. Now subject complements have two different types. The first is predicate nominative. Predicate nominative is a word or word group in the predicate that identifies the subject or refers to it. So, in our examples, has she become a dentist? Dentist would be our predicate nominative. And notice that it's a noun. Friendship is what I value most. Here we have a word group, what I value most, as our noun, but it's an abstract noun, and it's functioning, even though it's got 4 words, it's functioning as one word and one idea in that sentence. And so it's a predicate noun, even though it's a phrase. The last one, the new teacher, is he, the man in the blazer. This is serving as a predicate pronoun. And notice our abbreviation is different for this. P, capital P-R-O, which is our predicate pronoun. So we have the first type is predicate nominative, which are nouns or pronouns. And sometimes people will break that off into a second group as predicate pronouns, but for right now we're going to look at them as just predicate nominatives, which are nouns and pronouns. Our second type of subject complement is a predicate adjective. A predicate adjective is an adjective that is in the predicate that modifies the subject. So the soup is hot, or hot soup. The soil seems dry and crumbly soil. How expensive are those shoes? Expensive shoes. In all of these, we've got adjectives that are in our predicate, so we call them predicate adjectives. So the two types of subject complements that go with linking verbs are predicate nominatives, which are nouns and pronouns. Sometimes predicate pronouns are their own group, but right now we're just saying they're predicate nominatives, and predicate adjectives, which are adjectives that fall in the sentence. So moving on to action verbs now. The overall term for action verbs, what action verbs have, are an object. And objects are complements that do not refer to the subject. Objects follow transitive verbs, verbs that express an action toward a person, a place, or a thing. Example, Lee Trevino sank the puck. Sank what? The puck. Now I remember your name. Remember what? Your name. Okay, so for these you're going to ask who or what about your verb to find your object. Now, for your objects, there's two kinds. There's your direct object and your indirect object. So first, our direct object. Our direct object is a noun, pronoun, or a word group that tells who or what receives the action of a verb or shows the result of the action. To find a direct object, you first find the verb and then you ask whom or what after it. Tony reserved a space. Reserved what? A space. So space is our direct object. The campers brought firewood. Brought what? Firewood. So firewood would be our direct object. Jennifer kicked Jason. Who did she kick? Jason. So Jason would be our direct object. Our indirect objects often come with direct objects, but not always. So this one you may not find in your sentence, but it might also be there, so you need to know what it is. An indirect object is a noun, pronoun, or word group that often appears in a sentence containing a direct object. And for you to find an indirect object, you first find your direct object, and then you ask to whom or to what, or for whom or for what about the verb. So, for example, oh, one more thing. Where does it go in the sentence? And this is really important. I don't believe I forgot it. Your indirect object must fall between your verb and your direct object. So that's why a strategy, if you're looking for your indirect object, is to first find your verb. Then you ask who or what about your verb, and you find your direct object. And then you ask to whom or for whom, and you'll find your indirect object. So let's practice this a little bit. Jeff told Maria the news. So First I find my subject, Jeff. My action verb told what? News. So news is my direct object. For who or for whom? Maria, indirect object. The clerk sold us the wrong battery. So clerk is my subject. Sold would be my action verb. Sold what? Sold the battery. So that battery is my direct object. To who? To us, indirect object. So let's practice this just a little bit more. I have my questions up there before my other, but that's okay. So Natalie knitted her friend a sweater. So Natalie knitted what? A sweater. For who? Friend. So we find our subject, and then our action verb is knitted. Knitted what? A sweater. For who? The friend. My little sister sang me a song. So sister is my subject. Sang is my action verb. Sang what? A song. So that's my direct object. And for who? For me, indirect object. Okay, now you're going to do this in your activities for this week. You're going to look at your subject complements, which you remember can be, they're associated with linking verbs, and they can be predicate nominatives, which are nouns or pronouns, or predicate adjectives. Then with action verbs, you'll have an object. Your object has a direct object, which receives the action of your verb, and then you have an indirect object, the person or the object that receives it. So you're going to do these. Now, you're going to bring your notes in on Monday, bring your grade in for your Canvas activity, and it may cut down on what you need to do on Monday. But this week, this is what we're doing. So good luck, and I'll see you on Monday.